One of the ads that I get a lot of success with are story-based ads. So what is a story-based ad? Well, as you can see right here, this is a regular ad, so this is not a story-based ad. And this is obviously clearly an ad, right? It has a logo, a name, like a brand name, and it's all about the product. This is not a story, right? This is just a regular ad, so this is not a story-based ad. Now let me show you a story-based ad so you will see the difference. And as you can see right here, this one, in this particular example, is actually super long. And as you can see, it's created from his own personal name, Sam Ovens, using his own face. So in this case, he just created a Facebook page with his own name. It's still a Facebook business page, but it's using his own name. And then instead of being about a product right away, it's really just telling a story, right? So just 4 years ago, I was dead broke trying to build a consulting business from my parents' garage in New Zealand. Today, I'm on the, and as you can see, and I highly recommend you to read all of this. I'll include the PDF below this video as well, that to actually read this all, because it's actually very inspiring. And this is what I mean with a story-based ad. It's a good example right here. So usually there are longer ads, and they're very much text-based. It doesn't have to be just text. Usually it's good to have both video and text, or both image and text, because some people prefer to watch the actual video and some people prefer to actually read. But overall, it's a longer kind of ad, and it's based on storytelling. So it's not about, hey, here's my product, you have to sign up right now. It's more like, hey, I did this and I did this. Like, it's more a personal way of telling it, and that way it's just it's easier to get the attention from a cold audience. So if someone has never heard of you before, and if they're going to see an ad that smells like an ad, they're going to keep on scrolling. But if you tell them an engaging story, you're way more likely to actually grab their attention and to get them to actually take action, because there's nothing as powerful as a good story. So these are particularly good for cold audiences. Right. So how do you come up with a good story? Right. So first of all, I want you to think about where your story started, right? So I want you to think about the product or service that you are selling. Obviously, it's a solution to something. Whether it is, maybe you're delivering a service, you're doing Facebook ads for someone else, or maybe you are doing a legal service, or maybe you have a restaurant, whatever it is. But like, I want you to go back to the moment where basically you found the discovery that is something that everyone should have. And this may be super vague, and I totally understand that. But basically the ideal point where we want to go to in our ads is not just tell some story, but typically you want to tell the story of sort of the before and after scenario, right? So at some point, for example, if I would give an example, in my case, as you probably know, I have a product called UpViral. It's one of my main products actually, and it's not that I just realized it all of a sudden that it was working. Like, there was a time that I didn't know about a viral list building strategy, and there was a time that I did know. So in my ads, I tell the story of how I found out, how I discovered it by accident, and that I learned about Dropbox, and that I tell that story. I tell my epiphany. I tell my story of like what it was like to not have that strategy versus having that strategy. I tell them that story, because if I tell that story in a way that, like, how I felt and what it made me feel, and that takes the reader into that same mindset. They're like, and they might actually recognize themselves because they don't have that solution yet, but they want to have it, right? And obviously I'll give you an example of my ads, as I said. So that's really what is a big turning point here, like a big important point in this ad, like the story of the before and after. And if you don't have your own story, it could also be from one of your customers, for example. Maybe you want to tell the story of a customer of yours who before they had your product or your service or whatever you're selling, they didn't have a certain outcome, they didn't have a certain benefit. But then, so you want to tell the story of like what their life was like before and after, how it impacted what they discovered or what they added by buying your product or buying your service or getting towards that end result. So it's really about that distinction between the before and after scenario, and I hope that makes sense. Now, another thing that's really good to that I personally prefer to use as well is try to make them curious, because obviously you only have a quick second to grab someone's attention. So within the first sentence, you want to write something that makes them want to read the rest, right? That's very important. You want to make them curious. And ideally, you want to try to evoke emotions, right? Make them laugh, cry. And obviously, you don't literally have to make them laugh, literally have to make them cry. But you don't want to write a story in a way of like, I went to the gym and there I saw this. No, like you want to write as if you are expressing your feelings. Oh, I remember like I went to the gym and I felt like it felt ice cold. And like, do you see the difference? Like you really want to show how you actually felt, or how that person, your customer, actually felt, because it's all about emotions in these kind of ads. And also I want you to be true to yourself, and I say that because it's so much easier if you write a story from your own experience. So if you have any experiences yourself, that's always best to add, because that way you can just literally go back and just write it up. And obviously this is not something that will just, you will not write a perfect story from the start, because it takes time to practice. But as you will try to write it, and as you will try to improve it, you will learn it. You definitely will. And once you have a good story, you can just keep on tweaking, because I've actually been running the same story-based ads for over a year now, because sometimes I change some words, but overall the story is the exact same. And if you want to read a certain book about this, I highly recommend you to read the book Expert Secrets. It's from my coach and mentor Russell Brunson. If you do want to pick it up, here is a link, which will actually it's actually an affiliate link. I don't want you to purchase through me, but you obviously can if you want. I'm not saying that to promote this or anything at all. That's not the point here. But the reason why I want to share this is because I've learned so much from this book, and it's only like $10 or $15. I'm not sure exactly, but highly recommend it, because it actually has a real good, easy way to learn how to come up with a good story as well inside of that book. So highly recommend that. Now, as you might be listening to this, you might be thinking like, all right, so this is all still super vague. Like I need to write some kind of a story, and it needs to be emotional, and I need to get the curiosity, and I need to have the before and after. Like, where do I get started? I can totally imagine, I can totally relate. So first I want to go into how to get inspiration for your ads, because oftentimes it's not something that you just think of. You really have to put some practice into that. So how to get inspiration on story-based ads. Now the first thing I want you to do from here on out, and it might sound a bit crazy, but I do this myself a lot, is to keep a list of interesting things that happen in your life. Sometimes there's just something that you think like, oh, this could actually make a good story, and could just be the time you went to Disneyland, could just be that time is something that in business happened. Like even if you don't know exactly how it's going to tie in into how you can actually use a story, but if you had something interesting, something unusual happen to in your life, just make a list. So I literally have a list of things I sort of been through, or things that I thought were very unusual. And whenever I do want to create a new story, I just go through that list and see if I can actually relate that to the actual ad that I'm running. Because once again, it's way easier if I stay true to myself. If I write, like all my stories that I write are from my own personal experience. Some people will be able to write, come up with an imaginary story as well. But personally, that's not my preference. I just want to be true and honest, and I want to write everything from my own experience. And just having a list of crazy experiences in my life helps me to make it easier. So I can just go back to that list and use that as a source of inspiration. So I highly recommend you to just make a list, for example, on your phone. That will be the easiest way to do it. And if there's something happens that you think, oh, this may actually be interesting later on, just write it down, just a couple of keywords, and you will know, right? You will know and you will remember, and that way later on you can always go back. So also want you, as I said before, go back to, as a source of inspiration, like go back to when you discovered it. So when I, like I said, at a viral, I was, when I first figured it out, I was actually traveling the world. I was in Sydney, and even though that may not be related at all, I mean, it doesn't matter where I came up with the fact that it doesn't matter where I came up with the idea of a viral, right? But still, I'm using it because it's part of the story, right? Because the story doesn't just have to be factual, doesn't have to be just about your product or service. The whole picture around it makes a story. So I really go back literally to that moment where, and in my ads, I actually write things like, oh, I was in Sydney and I had a hard time growing my list, and I went back to the moment where I sort of discovered how that all works. Now, obviously, there's many different kind of businesses and different kind of moments where that could have happened. I mean, it could even be, for example, just earlier today, I got actually a package from one of our customers with a kind of Red Bull kind of brand. It's not Red Bull, but like similar-ish. And even if you have, for example, something like that, which is more like an e-commerce product, it's like the before and after. Well, I mean, it's not about the energy drink. It is about the fact that maybe, like, it depends on your positioning. It could be that you feel energized, or maybe that your brain functions on a higher level, or that you're more alert, or whatever. Like, and you can then write a story of like that you remember how it was before, but now, you know, life is better because you're all energized and you're sharp and whatever. Like, you can see, like, there's always a before and an after if you look good at your offer, or look good at your service or product. Also, what's always also good to write down as a source of inspiration for a potential story to write is if there were any walls or problems you were running into. I mean, if you are an entrepreneur, then I am sure that you have run into issues or run into a wall. And typically, if you had any kind of problems while getting from, you know, starting this business or the discovery of your product or service, if you had any issues, typically a problem makes a better story. Because if a story is just, you know, they live happily ever after, it's kind of boring. You'll notice in a movie there's always a low point. There's always a hero or someone who's like the main character, and throughout the movie you will see that he has some issues, and at some point there's a certain low, like a turning point. Like he walks towards a wall, like everything goes wrong, and that's where the point, like everything, you know, he sees the light and everything changes, and he has the epiphany, and then from that point on it goes better, and he becomes the hero, for example. That's often how a lot of movies go, right? So if you had any major bricks, like major walls that you were running into, try to make a list of that as well. Which is sort of an overlap, but like this one, did you have any conflicts, like any issues at all? Because that typically makes a good story as well. So now, still kind of vague, right? Still kind of vague. So let's say you want to write a story. Like in the very first sentence, you want to grab the attention right away. So there's one thing to do that is to write something unusual, unexpected, or a conflict. As I said something before, let me actually grab the example that I showed you before from, oops, not this one, the one that I showed you right here. And the first sentence right here, just 4 years ago, I was dead broke trying to build a consulting business from my parents' garage in New Zealand. Today in the Forbes list, and I live at 28th floor Manhattan apartment. Right away, people were like, what did he do? Like, that's definitely unusual, and definitely make them curious as well, which is another thing that's highly recommended. Try to get them curious about what's coming next. Now then, it will be good to sort of reveal a conflict or issue that you had. So if you before you had your product, or before you figured out the solution, you had a problem, or your potential customer, they will have a certain problem that they need fixed, right? That they need resolved. So what is that problem? And paint the picture of that problem, and like the conflict or the problems that person or you went through before you have the actual product, before the actual opportunity. And then also tell them why things are better now and what the actual opportunity is. Now, just to be clear, this doesn't have to be your product. It could also be, for example, if you have a certain lead magnet or whatever it is that you're offering in the ad. So if your ad is about letting people sign up for a certain lead magnet, then the opportunity is that lead magnet. Like, and now what I discovered here, and I'm going to describe it in 11 tips. Like, after I discovered these 11 things, like this happened, and I just feel amazed and relieved, and I would never go back, right? And by doing that, by talking about why things are better now, and about the things that how things are better now, you can add in your call to action. You can actually mention that, that ebook that you are going to give away, or that training that's coming up, or that product that you have available. So that's a good place to give a call to action. Back up your story with proof, or that could be multiple ways. Because obviously, if you are telling a story, people may still be thinking like, well, is it actually true? So for example, you could have a case study from like with actual numbers, if you if that is related to what you're, the market that you're in. Could be customer testimonials who had the exact same experience and who back up like, oh, ever since I drink this Red Bull drink, I feel so much more energized, and like a couple of customer testimonials. Or you can just have the same experience multiple times, like, oh, I had this, it was all wrong, and then I found this out and it helped and it worked. But you know what, I'm skeptical, I wasn't sure, so I gave it another try, and then this happened, and again, it worked. Like, by repeating the same before and after, it will become more convincing as well. And then in the end, shift towards your call to action. So what is it? What are you offering? What is in it for them? Like, why would you even want to do the thing that you wanted to do, opt in or sign up or purchase? And what should they do exactly? I'll click here to sign up. If, for example, if it's a webinar training, click here to subscribe, and make sure to add it to your schedule. Make sure to add it to your calendar. Be very specific what they need to do. Literally tell them, click on the link below to, blah, blah, blah. It's really important. Now, before I go show you some examples, because I think that's where it all starts to make more sense, just a quick checklist as well. Like, if you are going to write your ad, once you're going to write down your story-based ad, and you have a list of things that you could write a story about, and you made an attempt on like your first story, what I would do is like just go through your story again, ask a couple of questions to yourself to see if it's actually the case, and see if you can actually tweak your story a little bit. First of all, is the call to action clear? So if someone has never heard of you before, if they read it, is it just a story, or is it actually clear what is in it for them? Like, because if it's just a story but without a clear call to action, and with a call to action I mean it's clear what they should do, so whether it's sign up for your training, whether it's downloading your ebook, whether it's purchasing your product, is it clear what the call to action is exactly? That's really important. And also obviously what is in it for them. Does the first line grab the attention? Also very important, because if the first line is boring, then it's not going to work as well. Does it describe your emotions? So don't just be super boring. Try to evoke some emotions, because that's usually what people relate to better, and the better they can relate to it, the more effective it will actually be. And does it actually describe the conflict or problem that you had, and the same problem that your potential customer, your audience, will have or currently has as well? And also, does it describe, or does it explain how your solution made it all better, like the before and after scenario, as I told you before? So just to make things more concrete, I want to show you some examples of some ads that I've been running for viral, and I just want to go through as we go. I'm not saying this is the best ad, like I'm not saying these were working very well for me, and it's just, you can just use it as a source of inspiration. So right here you'll see a text, and by the way, this was the text, and below I had a video as well, which didn't fit into the actual screenshot. Here it actually did. But this ad, it started, so I went into the spy mode 007 style, so James Bond style, on Uber, Airbnb, and Dropbox, and I discovered something everyone should know. So it's really like, first of all, I add a little bit of humor in it. I try to make it like less boring just by adding this, right? Because it's more like storytelling, it's more like in a fun, engaging way, and I try to grab their attention right away. I discovered something everyone should know. So what is it? Like, you went into spy mode, like I try to get a little bit, get their attention a little bit. The number one traffic strategy that hardly anyone use besides them. It's what helped me to grow to it would help them grow to 4 million customers in 15 months, a 39% growth, crazy. So what I'm doing here is I'm just, basically showing giving a big promise of what this thing could do. I give them a hook into making it interesting, because who in my target market, who doesn't want 4 million customers, right? Obviously that's a lot, but also because it's Dropbox, it's kind of, people actually believe it. And but then I say crazy. I mean, I'm not just saying, well, this is what happened. I'm actually adding some emotion. I mean, it's crazy, right? Crazy. So once I started experimenting as well. And here's my story. Like, I really write it like I actually I did this, right? It's not we did it. Like, I personally did it. Like, once I started experimenting as well. Viral hacking is what I call it. Been doing a lot of experiments on this, and I have to say I got pretty darn good at it. And as you can see right here, I usually add some emoticons, some smileys as well, because it just makes it feel more human, I'd say. Here I already add in the call to action. I'll tell you all about my upcoming free training session, and then I add in the link. It's my main list building strategy in my business. Just recently I applied it on a highly competitive niche, and I gathered 16,000 subscribers without paying a dime on advertising. Or didn't I mention this is all free traffic, super powerful. As you can see right here, I'm mostly going directly into the benefits. I'm not showing the before and after story as much. Obviously it's always good to test different things. And here, as I showed you before as well, is I add some social proof, right? So I'm not just saying that it works for me. Here are some of the replies I got after I shared the strategy with others. And then this guy, he got over 208,000, and this one got over 100,000 leads. And in case you're wondering, even Tim Ferriss of the 4-Hour Workweek has mentioned this strategy on his blog because it's so effective. And what's great about this strategy, so it's, as you can see, it's really just a story-based ad. Now if you want to go into a different one, just to show you some different strategies, right here I start with a sad smiley, which is obviously, you know, a sad emotion. So I messed up my list building for 5 years. It's clearly like it's an emotional saying. If I wouldn't just say I messed up my, like this way, I think it comes across better. Also the smiley helps with that. And then once again, it's really from my own perspective. I recently stumbled upon a new strategy, and I realized that the usual way of doing things is outdated and ineffective. So now we're really going to the old versus the new ways, right? Right away I add in the call to action. Join me on a live training where I'll show you how I've been able to generate more leads in the last 12 months than the 5 years prior. Once again, I'm reflecting the before and the after. Like the last 12 months, really good. Before that, not so good, right? That's sort of how it works. Here's what I've been doing in the past. I basically send traffic. So as you can see, right, I'm really painting that picture from before. Seems right, doesn't it? Well, it's not. It kind of works, but it doesn't compare to the strategy I discovered. So I'm trying to keep your interest. And I'm not saying everything. I'm just, here's what I discovered, right? I'd love to show you exactly what I've done, including live case studies you can check out. I want to teach you for free. The first time I implemented this, and this is like really the after. So like when I actually discovered this, I collected this amount of leads within the first 30 days without relying on any of my existing traffic sources or spending a dime on advertising. Isn't that crazy? Once again, trying to make them feel, isn't that crazy? Like, that's crazy, right? And then I just really go into the call to action. And as you can see, click the link below, go to the page, enter your name, email address, and then mark it on your calendar. Do it now, mark it on your calendar. Make sure you'll be there with me. So I'm literally saying them what they should be doing to the letter, right? Just to give you another example, ever heard of Dropbox? And that's not really drawing curiosity, but like they would be like, oh yeah, of course they heard about it. So what about it, right? My guess is that a friend told you about them, right? Well, that's because they mastered the art of viral hacking, which got an army of people desperate to promote them to their friends. Did it work? Heck yeah. As you can see, once again, I'm trying to make it emotional, right? 4 million users in 15 months, crazy. Ever since I saw that, I've been using that exact same model to build a my email list over and over again. The first time I implemented this, so once again, I sort of skipped the before part, but I showed them a big promise on a story-based way, and then I transferred to like, this is how I actually did. And once again, I add in social proof. But the whole point of these kind of ads are not to write a perfect story, but try to practice and try to come up with a way that is more engaging than just a boring factual, like here are the benefits of our product, but you are writing this from your own personal name, your own face above it, and you're writing it from you, like I did this, and this way people will be able to relate better. So highly recommend you to also read through this example because it's actually very good, and it doesn't have to be that long. I would not actually recommend to do it that long unless you're a really good story writer, because typically it's not easy to write this long and still keep people engaged. So that's why my ads are actually a little bit shorter, and I also include the URL multiple times just to make sure that is clear. And obviously there's multiple ways of doing it, but I'm gonna make sure that it's very clear that they don't skip on that. So that is what I wanted to share about story-based ads. Like I said before, they work really well on cold audiences. In other words, people who've never heard of you before, but it just definitely takes time to actually practice. So once again, just to sort of summarize, make sure to make a list of interesting things that happened to you, and sort of the discovery you made from the before towards the after. Like, what did you discover that made your solution, made your product, made your service so awesome? And then try to write a story about that, or write a story from one of your customers' minds. So let's do it, and I will see you in the next video.